Welcome to Books and Ideas Audio, a presentation of the Vancouver Writers Fest. The Vancouver Writers Fest connects people to exceptional books, ideas, and dialogue through year-round programming that ignites a passion for words and the world around us. I'm Leslie Hertig, Artistic Director, and I'm very happy to share this conversation featuring award-winning American author Lauren Groff in conversation with editor, critic, and writer John Freeman. This event was recorded live on October 18th, 2021 at the Waterfront Theatre on Granville Island in Vancouver, BC, as part of the Vancouver Writers Festival. The Vancouver Writers Fest carries out its work, including this event you're about to listen to, on the unceded and ancestral territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples. This event features Lauren Groff and John Freeman in conversation about Lauren's most recent book, Matrix, a historical novel that was shortlisted for the National Book Award and placed atop almost every best of list in 2021.
Wow. It is so nice to see you all. I have to tell you, welcome back. And welcome to the very first live event of the Vancouver Writers Festival 2021. We are all excited. On behalf of our whole team, thank you for coming out. I know for some of you it might have been a difficult choice to make. Others are just, couldn't wait to get out again, but we're just delighted to see you. So, welcome to Matrix. This is Lauren Groff in conversation with John Freeman. The Vancouver Writers Fest carries out its work, and this event here this evening on the unceded and ancestral territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples. We are very grateful to be here, and we are also very cognizant of the urgent and ongoing work that needs to happen as we move toward reconciliation and Indigenous sovereignty. Following the event, there will be a book signing, and I believe that's happening here on this stage. Somebody yell at me if I'm wrong about that. And books are for sale in our bookstore right out front in the lobby. That's being run by Kids Books this year, so we encourage you to pick up copies of the book and also John Freeman's new journal. Thank you to our government sponsors this evening. We could not do this festival without them. That's the Canada Council for the Arts, the Government of Canada, the BC Arts Council, the BC Government, the City of Vancouver, and CMHC Granville Island. Thank you to them. Now, on to the reason why you're here. John Freeman is an American writer, literary critic, and editor. He's a great friend of this festival, and I'm sure that many of you have seen him on our stages here in the past. He's always the first person I think of when we start our curating for the season, because it's John who has introduced me to so many amazing writers from all over the world, and I really respect his choices and ideas when it comes to the books that he's put together with his Freeman's journals, which come out twice a year. John is formerly an editor of Granta. He is the editor and creator, as I said, of the twice-yearly journal Freeman's. He's a poet, an essayist, and now an executive editor at Knopf USA. We couldn't be happier to have him here with us this evening. Please welcome John Freeman.
Hello. Oh, so nice to be back here. It's so great to see every one of you in every other seat. Please stay that way for the next 75 minutes. There's no dates tonight, I'm afraid. Thank you, Leslie, for that introduction. I also have got so much out of coming to this festival the last 8 or 9 years. Many writers I did not know about, and some I already did know about, but didn't really encounter it in the same way, which one of whom includes Lauren Groff. I sometimes think that if American literature is being slowly rewritten to the better, it's being done book by Lauren Groff. If Cooperstown wasn't weird enough for you, Lauren Groff updated James Fenimore Cooper's version of it in Monsters of Templeton, her exquisitely gothic 2008 debut novel. If the utopian ideas of American life haven't gone to hell fast enough in the last couple years, you can pick up Acadia, in which she does it in just about 280 pages. Her stories, collected in 2 books, have the murk and lore of American life and show its tangled, mythically dominant relationship with nature, and it's held up and recast and retilted. What if, her books ask, if the captivity narrative is really the heart of American life, not exploration? And what if all those mystics in the woods, all those people march-stepping through marriage and so-called happiness, what if they're caught in the middle of a force larger than themselves, something akin to a dark dream, something that needed a Greek chorus to call to it, to warn us not to give in to the abridgments of the soul, as one feels in Fates and Furies? It's been called a departure, Lauren Groff's magical, strange, beautifully written 4th novel, Matrix, which takes its name from mother in Latin and unfolds in the 12th century, breathing magical life into the poet and mystic Marie de France, from her banishment to an abbey to her early visions, love affairs to her construction of an amazing fortress and a maze. But God, how it folds in on her other work to date. This is a book about love and the altered states of ecstasy it produces. It's a book about the power of the collected versus the terror of being alone, of what a woman must do, what reputational myths she must set out into motion to protect herself and her ambitions. And it's a book about dominion and the environmental apocalypse that we're living through. As some of the things that Marie de France does set in motion while protecting some of the fellow nuns who populate this book are also destructive to the landscape they live around. Finally, it's a brand new feminist fable of the highest order, something that glints and reveals new depths every time you turn it around and examine it. It's a marvelous book, like something A.S. Byatt and Ann Carson might cook up together, were they to spend a weekend locked in a writer's room with green tea and clove cigarettes and a sleeve of saltines. Full of its own sprung alliterative sentences, tuned to altered states, powered by compound adjectives and a Latinate vocabulary that stretches back a millennium, it also sounds gorgeous and unlike anything you will read in a long time. Who here has dropped breviaries or missals or spavins or henbei or antiphon or slatrix in their lockdown Scrabble games? And tonight we'll get to hear her read from it. But first I'm going to ask her some questions. But first, let's just get her out on stage and congratulate her on this extraordinary new book. Ladies and gentlemen, Lauren Groff.
I need John to just travel around with me. That was really lovely. I like the love child of Ann Carson and A.S. Byatt in particular. Thank you.
Yes, well, you know, there's some very Ann Carson touches in here.
Oh, she's my favorite.
Yeah.
She's mega genius.
She is.
Yeah.
Autobiography of Red, are you a fan?
The greatest, yes. I just reread it during the pandemic, too.
Me too.
Yeah. Carry on. I mean, it changes, right, as we change, which makes it a classic. I think that's the definition, right? What did you think about the follow-up, Red Doc?
Not as much of a fan because there are fewer sandwiches.
Word.
The little scene in the middle of it when they're
sandwiches?
Yes, when little sandwiches are brought to them. Or is that in Red Doc?
I don't remember.
This might be a COVID dream.
Yeah.
Ann Carson brought me sandwiches.
I love this. No, yeah. I'm embarrassed. Maybe it's in...
Isn't there there's a person that goes to Latin America to give at a conference, and in the middle of the night, it's like midnight, and if you've ever been to a Latin American country, they specialize in little sandwiches, which suddenly seems like the only thing you ought to eat in the middle of the night, which is really good for your glycemic index.
Are you hungry?
I'm starving. Let's get on to your book.
Okay.
So Marie de France, tell us a little bit about her and why she, captivates you.
Okay, so she was a real person. She was the first published female poet in the French language that we know of, right? There may have been others. Anonymous was probably female. But right, I mean, in history, so I fell in love with her 23 years ago in college. I went to Amherst College.
Yes.
I hate seminars, period. And so, starting sophomore year, I found out this like a magnificent trick, which was if you were to go up to a professor and just smile a lot and be like, "Your classes are the best I've ever had. Can I take a tutorial with you?" They would let you take a tutorial. So for the vast majority of my classes there, I just took tutorials with my professors, and one of them was, over the course of a full year, we did translations from Ancien Français, which is Old French. It's a couple of centuries earlier than the Old English of Chaucer, for instance. So it's this magnificent, similar to contemporary French language, but it has its own rules and its own sort of declensions and everything. So I fell in love with Marie de France there, and after the cloisters in New York City rejected my internship application, I didn't want to be a medievalist anymore, and so I dropped her. And then, but I had in my mind, after I took up fiction, like it's the thing that was going to save my life, and it did. I had in my mind doing a project with her. I wanted to do for a while just a really radical translation, just I don't know if you've read The New Beowulf by Maria Davana Headley. It's so good. It starts with what is like the original Beowulf. That's the first word, and it means like listen or yo or like whatever. And she goes, she's bro, right? So it's because Beowulf is very much a bro kind of book. So I wanted to do something radical like that. It didn't pan out, and I never quite got through the whole translation of the Lay, her amazing, fantastical collection, basically of short stories in poetic form. But eventually, in 2019, I had this fellowship at this place at Harvard University called the Radcliffe Institute for Advanced Studies. It's awesome. You show up and you're in a cohort of basically geniuses in their field. So there are astrophysicists and historians specializing in 17th century Haitian, history, and people doing like sculpture and video. Like it's amazing. And we have many, many lunches and everything together. And you have to go to your fellows lectures. And so I, like every single lecture, I came out of like quivering and so excited. It was like this big pudding. And I still have an idea that I'm going to write like a black hole novel, because I was so into the astrophysicists. Like they're the coolest people. But I went to one by my friend, Dr. Katie Bugis, who's at Notre Dame, and what she does is she looks at the manuscripts, the liturgical manuscripts of medieval nuns, and she's able to extrapolate really amazing ideas about the way that they lived and the way that these manuscripts were actually used within the liturgy, the liturgical sort of cycle. And so, I went in going, well, this is like, okay, nuns. And I was sitting in the audience and I had like a secular vision, right? It came up in front of me that I had to write this book now because it was going to address the contemporary world sort of slantwise. And it was going to be, Marie de France was going to be the character, and it was going to be about the way that these women were sort of subverting and infected by the world of hierarchy. So it was there, it happened. We don't know anything about the actual figure of Marie de France other than the fact that she was very literate, obviously, so she was obviously noble. Those are the only people women who are allowed to be literate at the time. And historians have ideas. She may have been one of the daughters of Eleanor of Aquitaine from her first marriage to Louis, the French king. Or she could have been an abbess at Barking, which is an abbey in England, but we don't know. So I was able to just sort of play. It was just sheer joyous play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, so you've created this amazing sound of your new prose in this book. It's like kind of compound sentences. It's sort of tilted forward as you're always falling into the next state, and so it's always at a heightened level. And I'm curious if you could describe what you're doing here, what you're making, what kind of altered state are you trying to produce in the reader?
Yeah, I was thinking a lot, actually. So each of my books requires a different kind of sentence, and that's actually what takes me the longest amount of time to come up with. It's not the plot or the characters, which all take a long time too, but it's really finding the sound of the sentence and the way that the sentence works that intrigues me the most. So with this particular book, I knew from the beginning that sort of if there were male presences, they would be basically like indecipherable shadows sort of looming against the wall, right? They wouldn't be front and center whatsoever. And I thought about, so what does that mean in terms of sentences or even the structure of the book itself? And then I remembered someone was making a joke once when I teach at Warren Wilson's this great law residency program, where someone was saying that the standard Freytag's pyramid, right, the structure, the three-part structure with the climax and the denouement, or the rising action, climax, denouement, is based on a male orgasm, right? And I was like, oh, okay, this is interesting, because what would a female orgasm book look like? And so that was part of the structuring of the book, but also the way that the sentences are put together, because they do sort of flow, and I don't want to describe what an orgasm is, but I do want to say that it was very present in my mind to try to figure out what that would look like in a sentence.
God, I have so many follow-up questions. I'm cycling through. Well, it does remind me of the time passing section To the Lighthouse.
Oh, my favorite!
It's extraordinary. It's like it's
Virginia Woolf.
It's sort of between these two acts.
Yes.
And it's all this possibility, and it's like a sort of trance state. And I wonder if, rather than describe the writing, maybe you could just read a tiny bit from the early section. It can tell us a bit how the characters are living too. Sure.
Well, okay. So this is the relative beginning of the book, and all you really need to know is that my Marie is this invented character. She got kicked out of the court of Eleanor of Aquitaine. She was from Le Mans in France. She's a bastardess, and now she's an unwilling prioress of this abbey. She does not want to be here. She's really unhappy. Okay. Later, Marie will remember those days just after arriving at the abbey as thick and black. When she would peer back into that time, it was like looking from a well-lit room through the window into night. Nothing to see but her own face hovering like a moon. So hungry, the nuns' faces are skulls skinned of flesh in the dark dortoir. There are soups in which meat is boiled and removed to save for future soups. Fingernails the cold blue of sky. And then one terce a week after arriving, as she pretends to sing in all her dismal darkness, at once she understands what she must do. Eleanor's best currency is story, love that is given and received through song. What has come to Marie is a Breton lay in rhyming lines, sudden and beautiful in its entirety. Her hands begin to shake in her lap. She will write a collection of lay, translated to the fine musical French of the court. She will send her manuscript as a blazing arrow toward her love, and when it strikes, it will set that cruel heart afire. Eleanor will relent. Marie will be allowed back to the court, to the place where none ever starve, and there is always music, and dogs and birds and life, where at dusk the gardens are full of lovers and flowers and intrigue, where Marie can practice her languages and hear in the halls the fiery tales of new ideas shooting through conversations. Not just the tripartite God of parent and child and ghost who is talked about here. Not all this endless work and prayer and hunger. Marie runs out of the chapel when the service ends and digs into her trunk and takes her money and bribes a servant to go off to town to fetch a bundle of tapers and parchment and ink and tablets of beeswax for the composition. She takes a feather from an outraged goose and whittles a pen. She moves, she breathes, she eats what little the nuns have to eat. In the night, she waits for the noises of the dortoir to smooth into sleep, then rises barefoot and creeps to the night stairs and down. The world is blue with night. The stars are sharp, accusing. Inside the barn, it is warm out of the whipping wind, and with the heat cast off by the animals' bodies, and she presses her face to the horse's neck until it is no longer numb. The old war horse turns and snuffles at Marie's cheek with her damp, soft nose. She takes out her things, careful not to awaken the servants sleeping in the loft above, and goes to where the rats click in the deepest dark and sits upon the last few sacks of oats heaped against the stone wall. Then she strikes a spark upon the hay and causes a tiny fire that she uses to light the candle, then steps upon the little fire in the hay until it is out. By this small stub of light with the eyes of rats shining green at her from the deeper dark, she writes. As she moves through the days, she imagines her lines of the night. The life of the abbey is the dream. The set of poems she is writing is the world. FYI, the woman who does the audiobook is much better. But I don't know if you've seen it. Of course you've seen it. It's so good. She's Lady Bridgerton in Bridgerton. Yeah, she's amazing. She's like wry and she's crisp and she can spin those sentences like a whip. I love her. Yeah.
Well, there's a beautiful amount of alliteration in this, and it feels very embodied. And one of the things that was surprising to me reading it is you have a character of immense faith and visions, and she's deeply embodied in a time in which the body from the outside was being seen as part of sin. And I feel like you're sort of slightly retooling that myth to some degree, and I wonder if you could talk about that.
Yeah. Yes, so Marie in particular is very carnal in a really, really animal way. And I meant her to be carnal from the beginning. She's a woman of outsized hungers and lusts and desires and feelings. And her intellect, which is very powerful, comes through the body. And it's somatic in form from the beginning. This was very, very intentional because I needed a character who, within her very DNA, the philosophy of her DNA, she does resist the teachings of the church, particularly at the time. The mortification of the flesh was sort of the thing to which one would aspire. And she needed to be, in a lot of ways, an animal in the way that I love characters in fiction who are actually in their bodies. And I think, in particular, those are the ones that I think I personally, as a reader, live through the most. And so Marie, in order to be this complex person who does wonderful things and also tremendously terrible things, she had to be an animal. She had to be large and she had to be overwhelming, and her ambition had to be situated in the body.
She's 2 or 3 heads taller than most people there. And, I'm going to circle back to orgasms because at a certain point in this book, they start to happen.
As they do. Yeah.
Let's hope so.
That's true.
But this is where the book really kind of runs with the fictional space, and I wonder, as a person who grew up in a Protestant-born settler country and a sort of heavily Protestant section, did you grow up with sort of attitudes or feelings about original sin and mortification of the flesh? Because this just smashes them.
Yeah, I was a hyper religious child. And deeply Presbyterian, which is very cold and Calvinist, right? I mean, it's like
Same here.
too?
Yeah, my dad went to seminary.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. My dad was just a deacon. Yeah. Like, I know, like he didn't go to seminary.
Dietrich Bonhoeffer was like summer reading for us. It
Wow.
was like, I know. It explains everything.
Oh, I know. I knew I liked you. I like repressed people. It's good. It's good. All right. So this is like the early, our early shared religious training, right? Where the austerity was the point, right? Like to become bone was more interesting than to become flesh. And I think as a child, I was so fervent and so overbrimming with passion, and I didn't know where to put it, right? I wasn't allowed to speak in my family. I have an older brother who's very loud. And it wasn't like a misogyny thing. It was just like one person sucks up all the oxygen thing. But it was like had too much of everything, too many feelings. And I think the way that I was able to channel those feelings in the beginning was through religious feeling, right? Religious fervency. And for me, that manifested bodily. It was like very much a bodily manifestation. So I like the totem of my religiosity was this Bible. And it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever been given, other than my hamster. But it was like, it had these like paper fine pages that smelled so good. And you could see through they were translucent, and on the edges there was this like gilt, like just gold, and it felt precious, and it just smelled good. It looked good, and when you started reading too, there was so much sex in there, right? And so much war and killing, and it's like magnificent, all the stories. The Song of Songs is still one of the most beautiful things I've ever read in my entire life. And that was like the crux of the Bible for me. And so I think like because I responded to the book animalistically, because I longed to be in church, standing up, sitting down, standing up, sitting down to sing, right? Like, and to feel that awe, like it's a physical feeling of wonder and awe. I think that just honestly, inherently, it's carnal. And I was just in Italy this summer. I got very lucky, and you go around to these churches, and it's the narrative of. Like the narrative of the church, which is very much against the body, is directly contradicted by all of the arts that people leave behind, right? Like Jesus on the cross with, there's one, and it's like amazing, that I saw. The statue is from the 15th century, and he had a cut in him like this, and he's sort of like holding it together, like pulling it apart, right? And it was very sexual. It was like Jesus as a woman, like it was like what everybody was sort of standing and looking at it and taking pictures. Like, so it's like, it's this weird contradiction that happens, right, throughout the arts of the Catholic Church in particular.
Did you ever have visions, or did you ever have the kinds of things that come to Marie de France in the book?
No. I'm not, no.
A friend of mine had, yes, but a friend of mine had one of the Virgin Mary, Barry Lopez, who I think some of you have probably known. He wrote a really beautiful piece about it, and it was she came to him, and I don't necessarily believe in traditional ways, but she came to him when in the worst moment of his life, and said, you won't die here.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and for the rest of his life, it sort of hovered over him, and the ways that visions come to Marie de France is very different. It's sort of like a creative, it's both augury and warning. And I wonder if you can talk about writing those things, because it's like you're you've got your hands elbow deep into the mythology of early Christian thought, and you're just like, I'm going to take this out, I'm going to put it into new stuff, and it's lovely and amazing. Yeah.
Well, it's actually not new stuff. So this is one of the things about this book, that one of the challenges I set for myself, which was to not make anything up wholesale. So I did a lot of research into medieval mystics and sort of looked at their visions, and basically every vision that Marie has that's described in the book, there are parts of them that have been taken from other mystics.
Oh,
so
wow.
yeah. And I mean, the primary one, of course, is Hildegard von Bingen, who's like my absolute favorite. She's polymath, a genius, was an incredible musician. We still listen to her music. She's extraordinary. And she wrote these medical texts that were used for 400 years. Like and she was an abbess. And after menopause, which is against, I guess, the story that we tell about women and the scope of the power in their lives. After menopause set in, she started to get her visions from God. It was sort of the gift that she was given. And I love her so much because she was such a genius that she was able to take these ephemeral, abstract things that came to her, and she used them in order to grow the scope of her power. And in order to sort of to make her name go into the world, to get money to build her abbey and to protect her nuns, to become the person that popes and kings wrote to for advice. So like she's this person who took real visions. I very much believe, like Barry Lopez, like she was given these actual visions. But she was also really canny and really smart, and was able to expand power, the power that other people would have wanted to give her. I think it was amazing.
And Marie de France does this in your book, too.
She does, yeah.
She sort of begins to, there's like an imperial creep to some degree to what she starts building, and the sort of seed of dominion creeps in.
That's right. Yes. Well, dominion, yes. I mean, that's exactly what I'm critiquing, right? So imperialism is one of the things that I was thinking about very, very deeply, because I'll talk about this later. But dominion, I think one of the things that gave the breathing ember, the spark to this book, was my understanding that through a misreading of Genesis, through, God in Genesis gives to Adam and Eve dominion over the beasts of the land and the sea, right? And but I think the church has been deeply invested in misreading dominion as dominance, and giving permission to treat the natural world in a dominant manner, as opposed to in a manner sort of that's more kind, that's nurturing. So this is part of the critique of the book, what the book is critiquing. And there is imperial creep that happens because when you do start to... there's this amazing Judith Butler quote that I'm probably going to get wrong because I don't do anything exactly the way it should be. But she says, power works on a subject in a transitive sense. It enacts the subject even as it is working through the subject. So that was one of these ideas that I was thinking about, is how someone who takes in power and gets power also uses that power in a sly, dark, seeping way without her even understanding what she's doing.
Well, her latest book on nonviolence is quite fascinating. Where she starts to... It's interesting that the person who created our modern conceptions of gender and its fluidity and the possibility of being interstitial in gender is beginning to write a lot about how much our conception of individuality is one of the core poisons within our sense of philosophy, which is that most people, if asked, will protect, say, their family member or someone else, and that will allow them to do things that are against their moral or ethical code. But if everyone feels that way, everyone has an exception. And one of the things that her book on nonviolence, which I was thinking a lot about while reading your book, it sort of investigates, is just how much as individuals we're creating this torn fabric that allows us to accumulate power into ourselves. And Marie de France, it's weird because you're reading this and you think, wow, this is a feminist myth. This is like Lauren's kind of rewriting what happens when women get together, and then things kind of turn a little bit.
Yeah. Well, exactly. I haven't read that, the newest Judith Butler book, but I'm going to now. Okay, we should all write it down. Yes, because I'm not interested in a hagiography, right? I mean, those have been done through time. I'm not interested in a hero. I think that's a really detrimental narrative that particularly is taking America down with it, right? Or the United States of America. I know you don't like that when we call it America. Sorry, we're all America. But I think the hero narrative is really horrible and ugly, and it's the thing that's being force-fed in every film that happens now, in almost every book. So I wanted to sort of feint a little bit and make the reader believe that's what they were reading, while also subverting that in a very real way. It's
almost a choral. I mean, if any of you have ever read Julie Otsuka's Buddha in the Attic, which is a first-person plural book. It's very beautiful. There are parts of this where I thought, this is an amazing construction, because it's like you have someone you're meant to think is the heroine, but you have all these other characters who are sort of emerging and flowing into the narrative, and it's I wonder if I could ask you to read it again, because there's the section where Marie de France is observing them read, sort of captures that swirl.
Sure. Yeah. What is she? Oh, I guess this is self-explanatory. I don't need to explain it. No. Okay. Later that morning, after the meeting, Marie goes into the warming room off the kitchens, where her nuns are sitting upon their stools with the books they're meditating over in low murmurings. Among the nuns at the abbey, only Marie practices silent reading, and every time she does, it makes Goethe shiver and protest shrilly at her witchy magic. Yet if there is no inner reading, how can there be any inner life? Marie thinks and imagines the cold blowing desert that must stretch inside her sub-prioress. The obedientiaries sit closest to the fire in order of rank, and the child oblates shiver farthest from the fire, nearest the cold. Marie closes the door behind her and does not move to take her seat in the place of greatest heat, but feels the chill wood against her back. When she will step forward, the nuns will hear of the new plans. She will share what she has been given, for now she savors the vision inside her. The light through the windows is watery and angled so that it shines through the breath of the nuns as they read aloud, the rising breath silvering, the streams of word made visible, word transformed to ghost as it rises from these mouths. The noise in the room is a low, sweet hum without pause, the voices mixing so beautifully that the impression is not a tapestry of individual threads, but a solid sheet like pounded gold. With their heads bent over their books like this, their words palely shining, she understands that the abbey is a beehive, all her good bees working together in humility and devotion. This life is beautiful. This life with her nuns is full of grace. Marie sends a prayer to the Virgin in gratitude. And then she steps forward. They are stirred from their reading to look up at her. They see the remaining radiance of this day's strange woman-tree vision shining out of her, and it casts itself like the light of a fire upon their raised faces. She begins to speak of her newest vision. Okay. I don't have to. It's all good.
Are you a fan of Louise Glück at all?
Yes.
I was rereading The Wild Iris recently, her amazing Pulitzer Prize-winning book from 1993, and it's a book. I would say her first 4 books, she's obsessed with death, and it's overshadowed with it. She had a sister who died before she was born, and she feels kind of doomed in the world, and then she sort of emerges in book 5 after her father has died, and feels reborn in her own garden, and every other poem in that book are called matins.
That's right.
Which you have in this book, and it's you've managed in this book to describe an experience of choral ecstasy, and then continuously break it down, so that in that passage just there, begins with Marie. We're sort of swept into the sort of group prayer, and then it ends with her speaking of her vision, sort of breaking the spell. And I wonder if you can talk a little bit about just the sort of rhythms that an abbey would have to have, and how you found your way in there, because it does feel like you kind of wax and wane into states of almost transcendence.
Oh God, yeah. So that was one of the greatest things that I was able to discover in my research, was the way that an abbey moved secularly in time, right? It's all cycles, and it's large cycles, like the way that the feasts arrive at different times during the course of the year, and they always come back at the same time. Sort of what happens with the ceremonies and the way that they come in and out. But then over the course of a single day, the nuns pray, I believe, 7 times, right? Once in the middle of the night, then lauds, prime, terce, matins. Like there are so many times when they have to stop and come together and pray, and it is very much a beautiful rhythmical way of living, right? It's stopping in order to pray, starting work in order to pray, because work is prayer, according to the Benedictine rule. And it's this beautiful, constant build that never really has like a release. So like it's one of those wonderful things. And so like what I love seeing was the way that time moved as sort of gears within larger gears. None of this was reliant on any kind of technological marker of time, too. It was all reliant on memory, what was written in the liturgical manuscripts, and the way that the nuns were just really hyper aware of the world around them, and what time, like obviously time was not marked with clocks, so you had to pay attention to where the sun was, when the flowers opened, when they closed up again, and the slow growth of the year. And I think that when I saw that, when I saw sort of the layers of time, the way that it moved within and against itself, it gave me an underlying structure for the book, but it also gave me a way to think about how to present each section, right? Each section had to be wheels within wheels.
Do you have any doubts about the book and its sort of power and enlarging force? I mean, I just think of the Book of Hours that started to emerge in the 13th, 14th, 15th century, where people had their own personal book of prayer versus something that was done collectively, especially spiritual people, and how that individualized. The book emerged as an individual form of worship. And you sort of looked at it, and it also scheduled and structured time for you in a way that, for a very small audience of people who are literate and who had access to these kinds of handmade books, because it was this was the way that sort of time developed for them. Simultaneously, though, in that passage you just read, it's like there was no inner life without inner reading, a solitary reading, and her visions come from that, but also her sense of separateness and what she does with that sense of separateness comes from that. I'm just curious what you think as we're evolving out of a book and into something else that you hold in your hand and stare at, and it tells you something about time. Like, are we really meant to be in some sort of collective structure like the characters in your book? I mean, do you think that's even possible to envision, or are we sort of, have we landed in individuality, and we can't go back. We can't go back into communal structures in the way that this book imagines.
I want you just to keep going. This is like the most amazing question. I don't even know how to answer it. I don't know, because even if you were reading collectively, right? Even if, say, you're all in the cigar factory making cigars and I'm up here reading to you, even though it's a collective act, it's still a hyper-individual act, right? Like, it's always filtered through the subjective consciousness of the person listening and hearing. So I don't know if it's actually radically, the idea of having a tablet or like a phone is radically changing all that much, actually, to be perfectly honest. But I do have to say, alternately, what a book is the most extraordinary science fictional piece of technology one could ever possibly imagine, right? Because what you're doing as a writer is you're taking off little pieces of your ghost and you're inserting it into other people. All right? I'm colonizing you with my ideas. And there's a certain amount of weird power in that, right? And power for the reader, too, in choosing whose ghost you're going to take into you. So now we're both big readers. We are teeming with ghosts. It's really a beautiful thing. You're never alone. It's always collective, because no matter what, you're accompanied by George Eliot or Louise Gluck, right? Who's singing some sort of refrain at the back of your mind. I think that's a very beautiful thing.
Yeah, I can't get this line out of my head from always I feel the ocean, biting at my life, which is her to me. But I guess I ask you this question because across your work, there's this dilation between communal and individual structures. Like Acadia is very much a novel, like investigating what happens when you try to set up a utopian society. Fates and Furies is about the utopian society of marriage to some degree.
That's right. It's very utopian.
And Florida is about, in many ways, like what happens when we ignore that we share a society with another group of species. And I guess I wonder to what degree you mourn collective structures, or you mourn civil structures, or if you have that kind of atavistic nostalgia for some former state. Not to say that we're selfish and individual, or that the book is bad. I don't think those things at all. I was just sort of, but do you think that we can move back towards more collective structures?
Yeah, I think that's the preeminent deep struggle that's happening politically everywhere, right? Not just in the United States of America. I remembered. But it's profound, and it is existential. And I think that maybe I don't have nostalgia per se, because I don't think we've ever come up with a perfect communal experience, and possibly writing about an abbey was my attempt to come as close as possible. Even though I think, abbeys being centered around God pose yet another problem, but it also imposes a regulatory superego, which keeps things from disintegrating in a way that my hippie utopian commune in Arcadia did not have that superego, and therefore everyone fucked everyone, and it all fell apart. So I think because I'm not looking at the past and I'm looking at the contemporary time, and I'm sort of mourning the eminence of the individual at the detriment to society as a larger fabric. I think that is where my sympathies are right now. It's all very complicated, right? It's all a balance, and I think the 20th century has taught us nothing other than neither one is acceptable, right? Like, you really don't want Stalinist Russia, which is collective, and you like deeply don't want the corruption of individualistic America, United States, either. So how to strike a balance? I don't know. I mean, this is the constant question of all my books.
Well, I read this recent book. I reread a book by Rebecca Solnit recently called Paradise Built in Hell, which is the theory of which is that humans are better than we typically are presented to be in crises, because out of disaster, mutual aid emerges forth. Mm-hmm. And I wonder what your experience of the pandemic was like in that regard, because you are an adopted Floridian, not the best record in the COVID land, but of course you are not representative. You live there, and what was going through your head as the lockdown began? Because I wonder how much of it was bouncing off the end stages of this book, and I guess what you were thinking about the sort of fabric of the country, the United States. As I did it. I'm sorry. It's hardwired in us. Oh, it is. Everywhere is America.
I know. Imperialism, cultural imperialism, even in our language. Yeah. This is profound, because this is something that I have been struggling with a lot, and coming out of the end of this book, as you said, and suddenly the pandemic happened, and I realized that my bone deep faith in humanity was not as there as I wanted it to be, because I looked around and I was like, oh no, these Floridians, this is going to be bad. And it was bad. And so we fled Florida, actually. I didn't want to live in the land of the individual. I loaded the car with the dog and the kids and like all the food that could be eaten as you were driving. And we drove a 24-hour trip from Florida to New Hampshire, where my parents, New Hampshire is like where individualism is like a cult. Yeah. But it's also like you have the forest. So if I had to, I could like take the bow and arrow out and like shoot a deer if I had to. So I loaded up the car, and it was a 24-hour drive that we did in 19 hours because there was no one on the highways, and we stopped only to pee in the bushes and get gas. And it was this amazing sort of like post-apocalyptic thing, but I really felt like I was fleeing, right? I was fleeing my distrust of my fellow man, and that was a horrendous thing to think about and to come to terms with.
But once you arrived, I think we were corresponding around this time.
We were, yeah.
It seems like you discovered one of the strange things, and we can talk about this once we open up to questions shortly, is this, in the pandemic, I had a similar collapse in faith of the abstract fellow person. Mm-hmm. But my faith in the people around me, my nearest, was never higher, because I was engaged with them on a level I had not been in the longest time. And it sounds like when you were up there in New Hampshire, you were like, everyone's terrible. My kids are great.
Yeah,
they're going to survive.
Like, the world is horrible. My kids are amazing. They're resilient. Yeah. I mean, they were my only friends. So I'm glad it happened that way. My parents, whom I love, were so freaked out about the pandemic that they wouldn't come outside to sort of talk to us, even with masks. Like they would like stand behind their window and sort of wave, which was so lonely, right? It's lonely.
It's a terrible image.
It was terrible. So bad. For 5 months, that was my pandemic. Living in the woods among the Lyme disease ticks, and with my children on totally not doing their work on school. Right? Like like the computer was on, but I'd always come up the loft and like see them like reading in their own beds instead of on their computers. Yeah.
So basically, their idea of wasting time was reading a book.
Well, yeah, we don't have screens other than like their school computers. So like all they do is read or like.
Oh my God, you've created the Abbey in New Hampshire.
I know. It's pretty awesome, actually. And they make them work every single day. And they spent the whole summer building a rock wall because I make them like lift rocks. I'm the worst mom. It's like, but they're very strong children.
Oh my God, you've trained your future little mini army.
Yeah, and I really do have a bow and arrow.
You do.
I make them do archery too. Yeah.
And have you? Okay. Well, we're in Canada. Have you shot anything?
No, I can barely even shoot the hay bale. No, I'm like very bad. Yeah.
Let's get back to Matrix, because the escalation of this book is really subtle and it sort of slowly creeps up on you.
Good.
And what do you? I don't want to give anything away here, but what can you say about that escalation other than what we've already said? Regarding the sort of dilation between collective and personal, and the sort of expansion of dominion and sort of creep of violence that grows out of the way you dominate nature. What is it that sort of tips this society that Marie de France in your book is building, that has many, many sort of utopian aspects to it, including infirmary-based orgasms, which you can describe perhaps, or just to say a footnote to, so that doesn't seem like I've just dropped that in from outer space.
I mean, it's a big part of the book, yeah.
But it is, there are many, many things that are working, and then suddenly it starts to turn.
Yeah. Does it? No, it does. But it turns and it doesn't at the same time. And that was the sort of thing that I was building up toward, like an idea of the multiplicity inherent in any event and result in life. So you can see a life. That is what I was trying to do with this book, was to see Marie and her life as sort of split into at least two very equal threads, and you could make an argument for either one being the predominant one, and they are contradictory. So yeah, I wanted her life to hold its own contradiction, and by doing that, I did have to build the book sort of to this culminating thing that ends up possibly calling into question a lot of what happened in the book. Yeah.
So we're going to stop there about giving away the book, because it is a really, really satisfying moment, akin to, I don't know, atonement-esque.
Oh, interesting.
And the way that suddenly you realize what you're holding is not what you thought you were holding.
Right.
And that's something only a supreme kind of clockmaker of the book can really do. And I'm curious. We've been here on stage at least once before talking about Elena Ferranti. The last time I talked to you on stage was with your fellow genius Rachel Kushner.
I love her.
Which was such a.
And also, you just called me a genius. I'm very like.
But it was fascinating, because do you remember what happened? Like, I would ask you a question and you would deliver an essay.
Yeah.
And I would ask Rachel a question and she would tell a story.
And that's the opposite of how we write.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, I know. She's supremely essayistic in her, and you're like enchantment.
Yeah. Well, I try. Yeah. It is funny. I think but that's also the way that we communicate in person. And I think that what a book is just a refinement of your mind as taken as far as you can possibly go. And it's not that, in public, I do essays because that's what I've learned to do. But in private, when I tell myself stories, I tell it in stories. And so, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So who recently? I mean, I know you're a huge George Eliot fan, and we talked about Anne Carson, you're a big fan of. But who in the recent years are you reading where you just think, whoa, I didn't even know that was possible.
Oh my God. So many people. So I read so many books, but I am my most recent like deep infatuation so far, like I've tracked down books that are really not all that available, is Roberto Bolaño, who he's not alive anymore, but his literary output is so astonishingly daring in ways that it makes me cry a lot. So yes, 2666, which is, I think, the great, terrible, magnificent book of the 21st century. I think so, right? I don't know. The cusp of the century, the turn of the century. It's an amazing book. It implicates the reader in evil in a way that I've never seen any other book do. I mean, the only other book that comes close is maybe Crime and Punishment, and I don't like Dostoevsky, so. But I think he also is able to do that. He writes novellas that are perfect, like legitimately the most perfect books. By Night in Chile, I've read that 8 times. Like I'm tempted to I can speak some Spanish enough to order tacos, but I really want to just read Spanish in order to read Bolaño. Like I love him so deeply.
What's your favorite book by him? That one? By Night in
I think
Chile?
it's By Night in Chile. And oh God, is it Amulet? I think it is Amulet, right? Yeah, that's an amazing book. It's very weird. Nobody has read it, I think. But
I love asking you about books because of American writers, I feel like you're someone who's more obviously fed by books, but without being imitative.
Well, I'm imitative. I think everyone's imitative. I would hope that. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, last question, just a small one, before I throw it to the audience for questions. But I think it's pertinent to this book because of what it is and what happens in it. But do you believe in evil?
No. Yes. I don't know. Do you? Do you believe in evil? I don't. Right? That's a hard question. Thanks a lot, John.
I don't think I do.
Okay.
I think there are acts which we call evil because we want to ostracize them from our conception of, what it means of humanity. They can be incredibly terrible. But is there a force like gravity that is sort of rivering around in the world, drawing things to it and bringing things out of me that it maybe wouldn't be brought out because of proximity? No, I don't think so.
Maybe that's what a black hole is. Maybe that's what dark matter is, falling through us.
A black hole is an incredible metaphor, though.
I know, right?
Because it can be so dense that light cannot escape it.
I know.
And I feel like sometimes that we're sort of emerging hopefully from a black hole. Sometimes.
There was still light. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, what the beautiful thing about black hole is that it bends space-time and light by the force of its own power. And so I think that possibly that is what the pandemic times were. It was something that sort of bent our perceptions. And yeah.
Well, sometimes I think in Matrix, like love is one of those things that sort of bends space-time. Like there's this. It's not an only light force in the life of Marie de France. It can make her do terrible things, but in the best of moments, love as an expression seems to draw out of her capacities that other feelings do not.
Yeah. But she's also she's bent by self-love in a way too, and like this vision of herself as this great figure and this grand figure. So yes, it's positive in that it becomes her religion. Like her love of her other nuns becomes her dogmatic religion. But at the same time, it also twists her. It makes her a little bit grotesque to herself.
Watching that transformation is mesmerizing. Speaking of which, Lauren is here. You're out there, but we're all in the same room, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
It's nice to feel your interest in bodily humors swirling around in the room.
Bodily humors. I hope they're not swirling.
Yeah.
That'd be really bad. They're wearing masks. We're not. Our bodily humors are definitely swirling.
Maybe that's because I just had too much coffee. But basically, she's here to answer any questions you have of her work, of what we've discussed tonight, particularly this book, Matrix, which is on sale, and she'll be signing it afterwards. I highly recommend you get it. It is just a completely and utterly unique reading experience, which is impossible to do in a time where so much has been written. Does anybody have a question?
Oh, good. Thank you. You're very brave. Thank you. You yell, and he repeats it.
Yeah.
Thanks. I want you to tell us about the horny nuns. Good. Yeah, I will tell you. Yeah, go
All
ahead.
right. Summary challenge on that one. The questioner would please like to hear more about the horny nuns, asks about sources of said horny nuns and their experience. There's a character in the book called Nest who works in the infirmary who, just for context, delivers experience to said main character under advice saying that this is not sinful because it doesn't exist in the... There's nothing against women giving each other pleasure in the Bible, sexual pleasure. Is that a good summary?
I know, he's so uncomfortable. I know. I love it so much. Keep going, John.
My inner Presbyterian is just sweating so much. It's not because it's queer love. It's just any sexual description in public. It's just...
His face. I love that he had to repeat that. That makes me so happy. Yeah, so it's true. So one of the books that I read, I'm not I can see the cover. I can't remember who wrote it or what the title was. I will let you know later. One of the revelations of this book is that because at the time, the people who were making the rules of the church were clerics, male clerics, who were devoted to chastity. Their comprehension of female physiology was very poor. And so there was this idea that if a penis wasn't involved, it wasn't sex. So therefore, there were no rules there were rules against sodomy because there's a penis involved. But what they would have called female sodomy didn't exist because it could not have been imagined by these men who were there was a hole in the imagination that two women together was they're friends, they're kittens, right? In the historical record, there are many instances of women who would have sex together or sleep in the same bed, and they were just practicing. That's what people would think, someday for real sex, it just wasn't sex. It couldn't. And that was one of the things that I was inquiring about over the course of this book was how do you take these absences in the historical record, for instance, Marie de France's actual life is this giant hole in the historical record. We don't know anything about her or about the vast majority of women who would live in an abbey. And how do you animate that? How do you shine light into it? So I thought that was a kind of a neat sort of microcosm of the larger concerns of the book, the animating sex as sort of a part of the larger concerns. But also, it was fun. And also, I have to tell you, John just came back from 3 months in England where they have the Bad Sex Awards, right? These puerile little children with a literary magazine have decided to make people feel bad about the sex scenes that they write. What is it called? The Literary Review? They're horrible people. They're horrible people. Because what it has done to the larger literary culture is to make people afraid to write about sex, right? And this is an essential part of a great number of people's lives, right? This is the reason why people in, say, Anna Karenina, for instance, do the things that they do. So why should we be afraid of writing about this really important, really interesting things that all of our ancestors have done in the past, right? We would not be here if it weren't common. So I get very, very angry about these assholes, especially since they like picked out of context some of my scenes from Fates and Furies to try to like make me a person subject to their bad sex awards. And so I made a decision that I'm never going to write a novel without a great deal of sex in it from now on, because fuck those assholes, right? Sorry if my language offends you. Yeah.
Great question. Does anybody have another?
So I have no filter, so go for it. Yes. Yeah.
The question begins with regards to how Marie enters the abbey and against her will, and the book goes along, she doesn't become more religious. She becomes more involved in acquiring power and in exploring her own mind. And the audience member was wondering if that is deliberate and what was.
Yeah. So I think that my read is different, and it's totally fine that we have different reads. We're different people. This is good. But I would say that she resists all of her life dogmatic religion, right? Like the religion that people tell her that she has to invest in. But it's something about the cycles within the cycles, the liturgical cycles and the daily cycles, the love of her fellow nuns that does eventually seep into her, I believe, in my read of the book. So that even if her religion is not necessarily that of the exact like Pope at the time, right? They would have had many, many differences of opinion. She still feels awe and she feels holiness and she feels this divine love sort of emanating out of her. And she loves a lot of the narratives and the myths, not myths, narratives of the religion, and she's able to integrate them into her own self in order to sort of send them as a prism through herself. So that's the way that I read it. And the way that I meant to write it was that she begins almost agnostic and then slowly comes into a humanistic sort of religion through the course of her love of these women around her. So just randomly, I'm reading this book called Literature and the Gods by Roberto Colasso, who's so brilliant. And like The Marriage of Cadmus and Harmony is one of my favorites of his books. But this book, I just read on the plane today that atheism in the original Greek doesn't mean someone who doesn't believe in God, but someone in whom God has lost belief in. And I was like, oh my God, right? Like, that's an amazing idea. That's just an aside. I just thought that was really interesting. Yeah. Atheist, God doesn't believe in you anymore.
What? There was a question over here up at the the mask. I guess everyone has masks on. Sorry, with the you with the mask on. The
person with the hair.
Yeah. The blue shirt.
Mm-hmm.
Could you comment on the relationship between Eleanor of Aquitaine and Marie?
Well done, John. Yes. So in history, Eleanor of Aquitaine is my absolute favorite person. I think she was so amazing. She was born brilliant, and she was given all the privileges one could have been given, except that she was a woman. And she had her pick of husbands. She chose Louis VII, right, the French king. And then she didn't like him very much. He was very ecclesiastical. Like, apparently he was not good in bed. And so eventually, after she made him go to the Second Crusade, and it was terrible, she was like, I don't like him anymore. So she got an annulment. She leapt the channel and became a queen of her second kingdom of England. Amazing. As she had so many children, she was so powerful. She was in captivity for decades because she had raised her children to sort of threaten the throne of her husband. She's like a badass. And when she was, I think, over 80 years old, she was so extraordinary and tough that they sent her down to look at her granddaughters in Castile, which is quite a trip as an 80-year-old on horseback, and to choose which one would eventually be the next queen of France. And like, come on, like, what an amazing person to be able to survive all that and to do all that. So I love her so much. And she was this extraordinary source of a lot of art of the time. I mean, she was the one who was sort of funding the troubadours of the time. She was giving them money in order to make these stories and songs. So she was wild. And because I love her so much, and because I know a lot about courtly love, which is the sort of the secondary and almost oppositional narrative to the narrative of the church at the time. Because in courtly love, a lot of things that are not permissible or even good in the Catholic Church are very much like ideals. So, for instance, with the ideas of courtly love that exist in the stories of Eleanor of Aquitaine's court, adultery is a good thing, right? Adultery is something, it's not an impediment to actual deep love. Whereas in the church, right, adultery is like on Moses's tablets as like a no-no. So I think that it was, she stands for me as a sort of emblem of being an outsider-insider, right? She's a really tough person. And I love the way that even the stories that come out of the court are in opposition to the standard narratives. So when Marie goes to her court and takes in courtly narratives from the source, they come into the void of who she was at the time, and they animate her understanding of the world. And her understanding of the world is she needs this impossible love in order to sort of push against and to enact herself into being. So for the rest of her life, she has this love-hate relationship with Eleanor of Aquitaine. And she wants to destroy her because she sent her away to this abbey, but she also wants to keep her as her impossible ideal, and she wants to come close to her in terms of letters. So my model for this, and it's very, very different, but I was thinking about in the very early stages of Magda Svabo's The Door, which is this amazing story about two women coming close and then far apart in terms of their affection to each other, and there's this constant flux. Yeah. You've read that book, yeah?
Yeah, that's an incredible book. There's a question right here. I think we probably have time for one more. The question is, what was the central flame of Lauren's former life as a medievalist?
My failed life as a medievalist, yeah.
Alternate life.
Yeah, I don't know per se. I think it was a way for me to use my French. So I spent a year in France between high school and college as a Rotary Youth Scholar, which was great in some ways and horrific in others. Great because my host family was caterers, so they would bring home foie gras every day, and we'd have little champagne parties every single day. But I came in as a massively athletic person. Had like 14 varsity letters. And I was supposed to swim at college, but I gained 50 pounds. And actually when I came down the gangplank toward my parents after the end of my year, they looked past me because they didn't, it's not recognizable. So that wasn't so good, but whatever. My old French was a way of using my French in a way that seemed really interesting to me. I kind of love the weird art of the time where heads are really big. And the perspective of the time is really fascinating to me. I mean, the Bayeux tapestries was one of my great obsessions. And I don't know if you know this, but on Wikipedia, actually, you can see the whole thing. You can scroll through the whole thing and sort of look at these little details and everything. And I think that there was something very powerful to me about thinking about this time that I think the modern contemporary brain thinks of as very flat, a really difficult, sort of dirty, sad, antibiotics didn't exist time, so everyone died all the time. It's like Monty Python, right? Like this is our conception of the Middle Ages. But to see through the arts and the literature rounds people, right? To see, it's almost like watching our misperceptions being blown into like a balloon, and you can sort of see the roundness there. And I think that was incredibly compelling because it was not the narrative that anyone I knew about the Middle Ages. Yeah.
Oh, well, all right. One final question up here.
Well, so I was very, very careful. I wanted this book in some ways. It's a very feminist book, but I also wanted it gender to drop out of it in a certain way. So like there's no oppositional within the book ideas about the women against any kind of men. But I also didn't want there to be the male gaze in any way whatsoever in this book. So I, even God, even Jesus on the cross is not described as a man. And God in the visions of Marie, which I took from actual mystics' visions, has very feminine characteristics often. So, for instance, in one of the visions, God is a great hen laying the eggs of the world. And hens are, of course, female, right? But yeah, I think throughout, I'm sort of slightly pushing toward a feminized reconception or reframing of the creator. Yeah, because, right? Matrix is actually the word for womb. Yeah.
On that note, I want to thank Lauren for making her way out here to Vancouver, and you for joining us. It's so nice to be in the same room. And I think we're going to go outside, and then you're going to sign some books.
And you're going to sign some Freemans, which we're going to talk about on Wednesday.
Yes.
It's going to be so much fun.
Leslie is making a gesture saying...
The signing's here.
The signing happens right here. Okay. So we're just going to stay here, and then you'll go out and get the books and come back. But for now, let's just thank Lauren and for making this beautiful book and this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Thank you, everyone.
You have been listening to Books and Ideas Audio, a presentation of the Vancouver Writers Fest. To hear more events like this one, please visit our website at writersfest.bc.ca.